So let's discuss the about this guidance. What does this means? The worker roots are skilled worker, global business mobility, tier 2 minister of religion, and international sports person. This guidance is very important for every single person who apply this license. And this also says by the Home Office, you should read all parts of this guidance to ensure that you understand your duties and responsibilities as a sponsored license. So if you're applying for this visa, you must have understand this guidance properly. This guidance is divided in three main parts, and the three main parts are: part 1 tells you how to apply a sponsor license, the requirement you must meet, how we consider your application, and what happens if we refuse your application. We will discuss all these questions in this guidance. Part 2 is sponsor a worker general information. Tells you about the process you must follow to sponsor a worker once you have obtained your license. So, what you need to do after you obtain the license. This is part 2. And part 3 is about sponsor duties and compliance. Responsible as a sponsor and actions will take if you breach or you suspected of breaching these duties, including if you act in a manner that is not conducive to a public good. The Home Office can refuse your license, can revoke your license, or they can downgrade that license. This will be discussed in part 3. So first we will discuss the part 1, then part 2 and part 3. There are three appendix in this. Appendix A tells you the documents you must support to your sponsor license application. Appendix B, this is the list of immigration offenses. And Appendix D tells you are about record keeping duties as a license sponsor. So Appendix A will tell you which documents you need. Appendix B is the list of immigration offenses, and Appendix D will tell you what you need to do and how you need to keep the record of your visa when you apply. You can contact the Home Office. This is also mentioned in the guidance. If you have any queries about the application, you can call 0300 123 4699. So you can phone this number if you have anything you wanted to ask the Home Office regarding the guidance. This guidance is divided then in L1 to L8. We will discuss that further on, L1 to L8. And then we will discuss L9, L10. Now we will discuss this is a glossary, which is basic compliance check. In glossary, what do we actually mean by compliance check? Compliance check is basically a digital compliance inspection, a review of evidence or information on your own. A compliance check can include, but it's not limited to, any of these following. This is what it means by the compliance check. So if they need to do a compliance on your visa application, they can visit. That's one thing. They can do inspection, they can do digital inspection, or they can review the evidence which you provide them. Compliance visit means where we visit to perform a compliance check. Many applicants do ask this common question: will the Home Office will visit? How do I provide the address and how do I provide the business address? Will they visit the business? What's the genuineness of the business? This is where they check. Where we visit you to perform a compliance check. This includes visiting any branches or site under your control. So if you're running, for example, a franchisee of Domino's, they can run a check on digitally on that, or they can visit your franchisee office for that, or any relevant client site or third party where your sponsored worker will be working, or any takeaway or any online business. If it's online business from home, they might visit your home for that, to know that you're working genuinely. So this is the glossary. Probably you can read that. I'll attach this whole document in my description. Now we will start with the basic. What is sponsorship? So this is discussed in L1, sponsorship and introduction. So what do we mean by sponsorship? If you wish to employ a person who is not settled worker or does not otherwise have immigration purpose or immigration permission to work in the UK, you will need to be authorized by the Home Office. This authorization is known as a sponsored license, and employers who hold a sponsored license are known as sponsors. So this is part 1, L1. There are other L16 in detail, which if you wanted to read this, I'll attach this. As I said, I'll only pick up the important information which I have already highlighted for you. Routes on which you can be licensed. When you apply for license, you will be asked which immigration route or routes you wish to sponsor worker on. You can apply to be licensed on as many as route as you feel appropriate for your business organization. So you can apply different number of license as well on different routes as well. For convenience, these routes are classified as either worker or temporary work. So you can apply for workers and you can also apply license for the same time temporary workers. Now, what we mean by worker routes? When we talk about worker routes, we are talking about skilled worker, global business mobility, or senior or specialist worker, tier 2 minister of religion, international sportsperson. These are worker routes. And when we talk about temporary worker routes, then we are discussing charity worker, creative worker. We also discussing government authorized exchange and international agreement, religious workers, scale up, and seasonal workers. They all considered as a temporary worker route. So you can apply both of them. Now let's discuss the L2 of this guidance, which is sponsorship, your responsibilities. So the guiding principles are sponsorship is based on two main principles. So what are the two main principles? Number one, sponsorship is a privilege, not a right. This means that those who benefit most directly from employing migrant workers must play their part is ensuring the immigration system is not abused, comply with the UK wider law, not behave in a manner that is not conducive to a public good. This is these are the two main principles. The second one is the overseas national who apply for permission to enter in the UK to be eligible and trustworthy and licensed and wish to employ and sponsor them. So if you coming to UK, you must perform as mentioned by the Home Office. You need to respect the law. Now let's discuss further. So there is also mention about the safeguarding children. And in safeguarding children, it's mentioned about the creative worker below school leaving age. If you are or intend to sponsor a children below school leaving age on a creative worker route to take part in film, concerts, or other paid performances, in that case, you must apply for child performance license from your local authority. This means that you need to apply a child performance license from your council. It can be Edinburgh Council, London Council, Croydon Council, any council. Now let's discuss L3, which is how sponsor license works. Sorry. So in this section, provide an overview of the requirement you must meet to be eligible for a sponsor license, how we consider applications, and what you must do in your license. So, this guidance explains how you must apply for the license, what the Home Office consider to prove your application, and what you must do after you get the license. So, applying for your license, L3.1, you apply for your license by completing the application online form. and submitting the supporting document specified in Appendix A of the sponsorship guidance. There is a video on Appendix A on my channel as well, in which I have discussed all the important documents you need to provide when you apply for the license. I will attach the link of that video in my description as well. You must pay a fees for the application. The amount you pay depends on what type of visa you are applying, the size of your organization. So if you're applying for a less number of employees, it's a small, you've got a small company, then you pay less, otherwise you pay more. I have discussed that in my how to apply for a sponsored license, all the fees and how to do that. This document is about the guidance which Home Office visa officer see when he approves your approval for the license. Okay, so L 3.2, before you apply, you should read this document and relevant source of specific guidance to ensure you understand and you will meet the requirements. Decide which route you wish to be licensed under. That's another thing, which is L1, section L1. Like you want to apply for temporary worker or permanent worker. So if you're applying for skilled worker or religious worker, whichever route. So that's discussed in L1. Appoint an authorizing officer to manage your application and nominate level 1 user. We will discuss in this guidance everything about the authorizing officer and level 1 user. These people are known as key personnel. If you have multiple branches or sites, decide which branches of your organization you would like to employ and sponsor worker, and whether you need individual branches to hold their own license. You can apply for one branch, you can apply for different branches, or you can apply for the head office, and in that one application you can mention all the other branches. We will discuss this in detail, the benefits and the problems which you can have. Decide on how many workers you will likely to sponsor in your first year. So you need to mention how many people you want to sponsor in your first year. If you are not sure, you can mention 0. This will determine how many certificates of sponsorship you will need. So if you already know how many people you need, it's always better to know that first, because then you don't need to amend it afterwards. So for less work, you can mention at the time of application how many certificates of sponsorship you need in your first year. Ensure you will be able to send all relevant supporting documents listed in Appendix A. As I have already created a video on that, do look at that video, Appendix A, important documents of the for sponsorship license. Within 5 working days of your application. This is one of the most important thing you need to understand. If you apply for your license today, in that case, you need to send all the documents within 5 working days. Otherwise, you will lose your fees. It will just go to the bin. So you need to apply and then you need to provide the documents within 5 working days. Now let's discuss considering your application. Before we grant you a sponsor license, we need to establish that you are genuine organization operating lawfully in the UK. This part you need to understand this way, that this part will explain you what the Home Office visa officer will think to consider your application. What documents they need, what evidence they need. To prove this, you must provide certain documents and information specified in Appendix A of Sponsor Guidance. Appendix A, I have already created a video on that as discussed, which is a sponsored license important documents, how to apply for a sponsored license important documents. I'll put that link in that video so you can watch that video again if you haven't watched, which explains which documents you need when you apply for the license. But you need to understand one more important document over here, or information. So it says you must provide certain documents. So when we talk about certain documents, it's not mentioned anywhere that you need to provide tax form, your tax returns, your sponsor number of employees you are working, or evidence of them. It is not mentioned anywhere, but you have to provide. So this means that certain documents you have to provide all those evidence, because the home office wanted to know that your genuine organization is awfully like is operating lawfully in the UK, and that can only be understand when you mention all the documents in your visa. Okay. Further, it says note that if you are applying on the UK expansion worker route. So the UK expansion worker route, there is a video on my channel again, which explains that how to apply UK expansion worker route. You must not have an existing active trading presence in the UK, but must have a UK footprint. So for, in that category, you basically you wanted to come to UK, expand your business. So you don't have already trading business in UK, but you have some relation in UK that you're exporting product to someone. You have some imports from UK, etc. Like that. That's a footprint. So you provide evidence for that. The Home Office also wanted to know you are honest, dependable, reliable, and are not engaging or and have not engaged in behavior or action that are not conducive to public good. To judge this, we look at your history and background. So, Home Office will go back to your history. So, what you were doing before, what you have done before, how much tax you have paid, how much tax you have not paid, all those evidence, the Home Office can go back and will look to your history. It also further says the key personal named in your application. So the key personal name, as we discussed, authorizing officer, level 1 officer, level 2, we will discuss that further in this video, in this guidance, it will come up. And any people involved day to day running. So for example, you are importing goods from anyone. So that's you are obviously you are related to that person because you're importing from that person. Now you if that person is genuine. So you the home office will check all those things. No, sorry. It further says are capable of carrying out your sponsor duties and evidencing your compliance in a time frame manner to set out, which is mentioned in C1 section as part 3 sponsor duties and compliance, which we have discussed already. But we will discuss that further in detail as well. What do we mean by sponsor duties and compliance? We judge this by looking at your current human resources and recruitment practices to make sure you will be able to fulfill your sponsor duties. And we may conduct a compliance check on you before your license is granted. So the Home Office will do the compliance check, but it says may. Sorry. Meet any relevant specific route requirement. For example, if you are applying under skilled worker route, the scale up route, or any global mobility program route, you must be able to offer genuine employment that meets the skill level and any salary requirement roles of the route. So, for example, you are applying for the chef. You have a restaurant and you are applying for a visa for the chef. In that case, you need to provide the skill level that the person who's coming to UK got the skill level, got the experience, and you paying them salary, which is required by the rule. Otherwise, meet the eligibility and suitability criteria. So that's another important part that you must meet the eligibility and suitability criteria. In this video, it will come further that what do we mean by eligibility and suitability criteria. Now, deciding your application. This is what mentioned by the Home Office in L3.4. Application may be rejected as invalid, refused, or granted with a A rating, or in the case of UK expansion worker route, a provisional rating. Section 9 of this guidance has more information about the decision we may make on your application. If you do not submit mandatory documents with your application or you do not pay full fee, your application will be invalid and we will reject it without further consideration. You need to provide important document within 5 working days. If you don't provide, the application will be invalid. If you do not meet all of the eligibility and suitability criteria, we will refuse your application and you may not be eligible to reapply for 6 months. In this guidance, there is a discussion about the cooling off period, which we will discuss further as well. What do we mean by cooling off period and when you can apply? If your application is approved, your organization name will be added on register of sponsors on the gov.uk website. You will be given access to sponsorship management system. SMS is a system which will be provided once you get the license, on which you can issue the certificate of sponsorship number and all that, and you can manage employees. Maintaining your license. If granted, your license will be valid for 4 years. This is a very common question people ask. How many years my license will be valid for? It will be valid for 4 years unless we revoke you or surrendered it before then. The 4-year will run from the date of your license is granted. You must apply to renew before 4 years has expired if you wish to continue sponsor workers. If you are granted the UK expansion worker license, you must normally have to establish a trading business within 2 years of the license was granted, and you have applied to add at least one other routes to your license. This is another important question many people ask about the UK expansion worker visa. How much time they have to manage the business or to run the business? So they have 2 years. So when you get that visa, you get the visa for within the 2 years period. You need to make sure that you submit the documents and you apply for another route. Okay, now we will discuss further. If you fail to comply with your duties or become no longer eligible, suitable to hold the sponsor license, we may take actions against you, including so the Home Office can downgrade your license, can reduce the number of certificate of sponsors you can issue, suspending your license, revoking your license, and in serious cases, they can report it to the police and relevant authorities as well. So you need to make sure when you get the license, you do it right and you manage it right. Well, 4. Now we will discuss the key personnel. So in this section, we will discuss about authorizing officer, level 1 officer, level 2 officer, all the details related to key personnel. So this section tells you about appointing the key personnel in your organization, what responsibilities they have, and the requirement they must meet. General rules on key personnel. The online sponsor application form requires you to certain responsibilities to the member of your staff. So you need to provide the details on your online application that what responsibilities they will do. Some or all of whom will have access to the sponsorship management system. After a license is granted, we call these people key personnel, and there are 4 roles. So there are 4 roles, and you need to decide who will run the sponsorship management system, which is also known as SMS. So number 1 is authorizing officer, number 2 key contact, Number 3 is level 1 user, and number 4 is level 2 user. So this is all we will discuss further step by step. Only level 1 and level 2 users will have access to SMS. If the authorizing officer or key contact requires access, they must also be set up as a level 1 or level 2 user. Many people think that as an authorizing officer, you should have access to SMS, but that's not the case. The case is if they need access, then they need to set up themselves as level 1 user. Level 2 user have less access. We will discuss that further. Each of key personnel must be based in the UK for the period they fill the role you have appointed them. So, for example, you have appointed someone who is level 1 user or level 2 user, and they are moving back to their countries. That period they cannot be appointed. So, they must be based in the UK for the period they fill the role. There is an exception to this requirement on the UK expansion route, where the authorizing officer may be based overseas from the time you apply for the license until you enter into the UK with a valid clearance. When you apply for UK expansion worker visa, you will be able to access the SMS system as an authorizing officer. You will have access only if you have the UK worker expansion worker route. On any other route, it's not possible. And even when you arrive in UK on UK expansion worker route, then you must be based in the UK after the valid entry clearance for the purpose of work on the UK expansion worker business. Okay. Further, it says be a paid member of your staff or engaged by you as an office holder unless one of the following exception applies. A level 1 or level 2 user can be an employee or a third party organization to whom you have contracted some or all of your human resource functions. However, we will reject your application if you do not have at least one level 1 user who is an employee, partner, or director in your organization. So you need to understand that your level 1 user is very important. If you don't have that, the Home Office can refuse your application. A level 2 user can be a member of staff supplied to you but employed by an employment agency. There is a flexibility on level 2 user but not on level 1 user. Level 1 user must be an employee, partner, or director of the organization. An overarching sponsor license under the government authorized exchange can appoint level 2 user with the individual organization taking part in the exchange program. Further, it says none of your key personnel can be. So this is the important part. Your key personnel, none of your key personnel can be a representative who is not based in the UK. Many applicants ask this question, what if I am based outside the UK? Can I run the organization as an authorizing officer? So your authorizing officer, your level 1 user, level 2 user, any one of them cannot be based outside the UK. A contractor or a consultant who is contracted for a specified project, subject to bankruptcy restriction, subject to debt relief restriction, legally prohibited from being a company director. L4.5. This discuss about the authorizing officer. You must name your authorizing officer, key contact, level 1 user on the sponsored license application form. If you don't do that, then will be a problem on your application. These roles can be filled by the same person. If you don't have anyone, you can mention your own name as a director of it, or a combination of different people. But you must mention authorizing officer, key contact, and level 1 user. There can be only one authorizing officer and one key contact, but you can appoint more level 1 users once you have granted a license. Before the license, you will have only one level 1 user, but after the license, you can appoint more level 1 user to manage your SMS system. Level 2 users can only be appointed by level 1 user. If you are applying on the UK expansion worker route, and the authorizing officer will also be sponsored worker, that person must be appointed as level 1 user when you apply for the license. This is a very common scenario because the most of the applicant who apply for the license, if you are applying on UK expansion worker route and the authorizing officer will be sponsored worker. So the authorizing officer is the one who is visiting UK and is a sponsored worker. That person must be appointed as a level 1 user when you apply for the application. Further, it says you must give contact detail of your key personnel, both when you applying for a license and when changing any key personnel or adding new ones after we have granted the license. You need to provide all the details of the key personnel. You must also provide the national insurance number if they have one. If you are appointing level 2 user who is employed by the third party organization engaged by you to deliver all parts of your human resource function, the address provided must be the main business address of the third party organization. You must mention the third party organization address when you appoint a level 2 user who is not an employee of your organization. Where you are appointing a UK based representative to the key contact, the address must be the representative main business address. Subject to exception below, SMS user must not assign certificate of sponsorship to themselves or close relative partners or a close relative partner. So now this is also another very important thing. Many applicants ask that can I sponsor my wife? Can I sponsor my dad? Can I sponsor my mother under this visa scheme? So the Home Office clearly state that subject to exception below, SMS user must not assign a certificate of sponsorship to themselves or a close relative or partner. Close relative or partner is, so when it talk about exception, we will discuss the exception. The exception is the visa expansion worker visa. And when we talk about this visa, sponsor license one, we are talking about a spouse or a civil partner. You cannot do the sponsor certificate sponsorship for them. You cannot issue a certificate of sponsorship for an unmarried or a same-sex partner, a parent or a step-parent, a son or a stepson, daughter or stepdaughter, brother or stepbrother, stepsister, nephew, niece, cousin, aunt, uncle. All these family members, you cannot issue them a visa. It's not allowed. Only exception to this, now we are discussing the exception, is where you are applying for UK expansion worker route and your authorizing officer and level 1 user is an employee of the overseas business and will be sponsored worker. In this scenario, that person must assign certificate of sponsorship to themselves in order to make application for entry clearance. So that's why we call UK expansion worker visa self-sponsorship visa, because this is the exception where the UK expansion worker route, the authorizing officer or an employee will be sponsored worker. In this scenario, the person must assign certificate of sponsorship to themselves to make the application clearance to enter into the UK. They can do that. Apart from that, your family members cannot do that. Further, it says check will be made on your personal. So the home office will do the checks on your personal. When we talk about key personal, we talk about we will make checks on authorizing officer, key contact, and level 1 user, because these are the most important person for your organization. They will also do the police check on them. Now we will discuss the L4 and L418, which is the key personal rules and eligibility description for the authorizing officer, level 1 user, and level 2 user. So in this paragraph, below explains what each of the key personal roles, authorizing officer, key contact, and level 1, level 2 user entails and who is eligible to fill them. Let's start with authorizing officer, which is L4 1.9. When you apply for a license, you must appoint an authorizing officer. The person you nominate to this role must be the most senior person in your organization, responsible for recruitment of all migrant workers and ensuring that you meet all your specific duties and sponsor duties. If you do not recruit the worker you sponsor, this role must be filled by the most senior person responsible for your activity as a licensed sponsor. If there is more than one person who could fill this role, you must decide which one to nominate. You are responsible for the actions of your authorizing officer. You should ensure you are confident that they understand fully the importance of this role. So if you appointing anyone as an authorizing officer to sponsor migrants, technically you are solely responsible for that, for authorizing that officer to do that. To make sure that you know the person you assigning these duties are capable of doing these duties. Further, it says the authorizing officer is also responsible for deciding how many staff need to have access to the SMS system. SMS system and what level of permission they can have. They are responsible for the activities of all SMS users and must comply with the requirements of using the system. If they fail to do this, we will take action against you. You have nominated the authorizing officer, and your authorizing officer nominate the other users. In case if they do not do the activities properly, as mentioned by the Home Office, you will be responsible for that, and the Home Office will take the action against you. The authorizing officer does not have automatic access to the SMS. If they require access to the system, they will need to set up level 1 or level 2 user, as well as being an authorizing officer. This can be done by naming them as a level 1 user on your application or adding them as a additional level 1 user or as a level 2 user after your application has been granted. The authorizing officer is responsible for the activities of all SMS users. You must have the system in place to check these activities. We recommend that authorizing officers check the certificate of sponsorship assigned to workers at least once a month. So the Home Office says authorizing officer must check the certificate of sponsorship assigned workers at least a month. So they need to go back on the SMS level 1 user. So first of all, they need to authorizing officer need to assign them as a level 1 user, and then they need to check the SMS system once a month. You must have an authorizing officer in place throughout the life of your license. The nominated person must always meet the requirement to set up this guidance. If you fail to have an authorizing officer in place who meet our requirement, or you fail to tell us of a change in authorizing officer, we will take action against you. So the importance of authorizing officer must be placed all the time when you have the visa. If it's not placed, then it can be a trouble for you, and the Home Office can put the fine on you as well, or they can revoke your license as well. Now we will discuss the key contact. What do we mean by key contact? The key contact is usually a person who acts as a main contact between us and you. Over here, the Home Office talking about themselves, that he is the main person the Home Office will contact. We will contact them if we have any queries about your sponsor license application, the document sent, or the payment. We may also contact your key authorizing officer if necessary. But the key contact is the main person. So, for example, you have mentioned XYZ employee for the key contact, and he left the country or left the job. It will be a trouble for you. So, you need to make sure the person you assign must be on duty and within the country based in the UK. L425. The key contact does not have automatic access to the SMS. If they require access to the system, they will need to set up a level 1 user or level 2 user. This can be done by naming them as a level 1 user on your application, or adding them as an additional level 1 user or as a level 2 user after your license has been granted. For example, you have put the name of the key person on that, which is a very common mistake. People, when they apply for the license, they put someone name on the as a key contact, and they don't assign them SMS level system. The authorizing officer don't assign them the access to the SMS system. They don't get the message from the Home Office, and that's where the confusion comes in. The Home Office revoke the license or penalize you for that. Now we will discuss the level 1 user, which is the most important part after the authorizing officer, which is discussed in L426. The level 1 user is responsible for carrying out day-to-day sponsorship activities using the SMS. Level 1 user can perform the following action in the SMS. The level 1 can assign certificate of sponsorship to workers, ask for an increase in number of certificate you can assign, ask for more level 1 user, and add level 2 users to the SMS. Tell us about minor changes of your details. Tell us change in circumstances, report workers activity, withdraw certificate of sponsorship. Tell us of changes work address, change user details, view information about the key personal, access key messages we post from time to time. Apply to renew your license and track the progress of your application. Apply for premium customer services and track your application. So the level 1 user can do all these tasks. It's the most important person for your sponsor license. The level 1 user can be the same person as authorizing officer, or be the another person or other person in your organization. When you first apply for the sponsor license, you can only nominate one level user, and they must be an employee, director, or partner. Once you have a license, you can use the SMS to nominate more level 1 user. We will perform checks on level 1 users before we give them access to SMS. These include checks against our record and police national computer. If you are applying under UK expansion worker, an authorizing officer is based overseas at the time of application. That person must always be named as level 1 user. You can only change or add more level 1 user once you obtained a rating of your license. Further, it says L429, you can decide how many level 1 users you need. The authorizing officer is responsible to their conduct, so we recommend that you do not have more than one level 1 users as you don't need. So Home Office recommend only one level 1 user should be in place. But if you need more, you can do that. Once you granted the license, you must have at least level 1 user in place at all time during the life of your license. It is not possible for you to meet all of your sponsor duties without one. If we find you do not have level 1 user in place after your license has been granted, we may revoke your license. So you can understand how important level 1 user should be. for your license, otherwise home office will revoke your license. You must have at least level 1 user who is an employee, a partner, or a director. You have more than one level 1 user, any additional level 1 user must be the following: paid staff member or office holder within your organization, an employee of the third party organization engaged by you to deliver all or part of your HR functions, a UK based representative. They must not be any of the following. So, earlier we discussed what they must be. Now we are discussing what they must not be: contractor, a consultant, a temporary staff, or undischarged bankrupt. You must always have minimum one level 1 who is settled worker. The only exception to this rule if you are a diplomatic mission or an international organization licensed under International Agreement Road. Um, your authorizing officer is a person with a valid entry clearance, permission to stay as representative of overseas business, tier 1 graduate migrant, tier 1 entrepreneur migrant, tier 1 exceptional talent migrant, startup migrant, innovator, a global talent migrant, or a UK expansion worker visa. So these are the only exceptions you have. If you must always have minimum one level 1 user who is settled worker. So you need to have a settled worker, which we normally known as either he got ILR or he got the British nationality. That is known as settled worker. There is an exception. The only exception to this rule is if you have innovator visa, if you have a startup migrant, tier 1 migrant, all these, if you have, these are the only exceptions you have. Otherwise, you can have the other person as well. Okay, now we are discussing level 2 user. Level 2 user have fewer permission than level 1 user. Level 2 users can perform the following action in SMS: create and assign certificate of sponsorship to workers, report worker activity to us in respect of any certificate of sponsorship they have personally created and assigned or which have been transferred to them by level 1 user. Level 2 user cannot report certificate of sponsorship assigned by level 1 user. You may decide how many level 2 users you need. The authorizing officer is responsible for them. So we recommend that you do not have more level 2 users than you really need. Only assign what you need. If you don't need level 2 user, then don't assign them. Otherwise, it will create a confusion. Now let's discuss the branches. If you have multiple branches, what you need to do in that case. So the Home Office guidance says how you can apply if you have multiple branches. If you have number of different offices, for example, you have in Glasgow, Manchester, London, UK based subsidiaries or entities, location or campuses, which we call branches in this guidance. You can register in a number of ways, including by apply for single license. That includes your head office and all branches in the UK. This is one scenario, that you apply for your head office and include all the branches in that license. Or each branch applying for its own license. Or grouping a number of branches under a single license. For example, a large UK-wide company might find it more convenient to register all of its operation in a particular region under a single license. So the benefit of this is if you have number of branches that are individually licensed and we revoke the license from one of those branches or downgrade it to a B rating, we will not automatically remove or downgrade the license from other branches, but we will investigate them. So if the Home Office, if one of your branch breached the license, then the Home Office will revoke or downgrade only one branch, not all of them. But If you have license as a head office and all UK branches, and we revoke your license or downgrade it to B rating, this will apply to all the branches. Now we will discuss the franchisee part, which is L515. If you have number of franchisees under control, you can decide whether to apply for license as a head office and all UK branches, or have each franchisee license individually. There is a benefit for it and there is a problem for it. The benefit is if one branch goes down, the other branches will stay up. If the head office goes down, then all the branches will go down. If your franchisees are separate businesses, not under your control. This is also another common question asked by for example, the franchisees of Pizza Hut, Domino's, all these people. As the parent organization, each franchisee must have its own license if it wishes to sponsor worker. So the main parent company might have the license, but it doesn't mean that the franchisees will get the license. Franchisees must have their own license if they want to sponsor workers. Now let's start discussing the L6 of this guidance, which is application process. Using a representative. So if you are using a representative, in that case, you must make the application yourself. A representative can help you to fill your application form, but they must not send it on your behalf. If we find this happen, we will refuse your application and not refund your fee. Many people get confused with this. So Home Office guidance clearly says that you must make your application yourself. There is an exception. You can only appoint a representative at the license application stage. If you also want to appoint them as a key contact, you cannot appoint a representative as a level 1 or level 2 user at the license application stage or as an authorizing officer at any stage. So if you authorize them as a key contact, in that case, you can appoint a representative. If after being granted a license, you wish to use the service of a representative or add them level 1 user, level 2 user, you must appoint them using a sponsorship management system. If you want to use a representative, you need to go back on SMS system and you need to sign them by yourself. L6.6. If after being granted a license, you wish to use the service of a representative or add them as a level 1 or level 2 user, you must appoint them using a sponsorship management system. So if you want to use as representative, you need to assign them and appoint them on the system as a level 1 user or level 2 user. We will not deal with any communication from a representative acting on your behalf unless they have been appointed by you. If you appoint them, only in that case the Home Office will do the communication with them, otherwise they won't. Choosing a representative. If you use the service of representative, either in connection with your sponsor license application or in any other dealing with us, they must be based in the UK. And if they will be providing immigration advice or immigration service, they must be authorized to provide such advice or services in accordance to the Act. This means they are regulated by the Legal Service Board, Law Society of Scotland, Faculty of Advocate, or Law Society of Northern Ireland or Bar Council of Northern Ireland. Now let's discuss the fees. There is a fees for initial application for a sponsor license, applying to renew or existing sponsor license. In some cases, applying extend the scope of your existing license. Each certificate of sponsorship you assign. So you need to pay fees for every person. There is an additional premium services after your license has been granted. The premium service is the home office will send you an email and you can pay the fees and you can do the premium service. The fees is for our consideration of your license application will not be refunded. If we refuse your application or if you withdraw it after consideration of how it has been begun. So make sure your documents are ready so you can provide them within 5 working days. You know what you are doing and then you apply for the license. Otherwise, the home office will not refund your fees and they might refuse your application as well. Now let's discuss the completing the online application form. You must register your details online by completing the UKVI online sponsorship application registration. Once you have registered, you will be logged into UKVI sponsor application page. You must then complete the online application form and submit the specified document to prove you are eligible and suitable. These documents are listed in Appendix A of the sponsor guidance. If you gather all the necessary information before starting the application, should take between 20 to 30 minutes to complete. Now let's discuss the certificate of sponsorship allocation, which is discussed in L622. Online form asks you to estimate of the number of certificate of sponsorship you may wish to assign in your first year in each route for which you are applying for a license. So for the first year, you need to mention how many number of certificates you need. You will need to assign a certificate of sponsorship to any worker you wish to sponsor before they can apply for entry clearance. Permission to enter, permission to stay. You will therefore need to think carefully about how many workers you need likely to employ during and why. Further, it says after your application have been submitted, what you need to do. Once you have submitted your online application, you must send the following documents by email to validate them. All pages of submission sheet signed and dated by your authorizing officer. This includes a declaration from you that you agree to meet all the duties associated with being a sponsored license. Many applicants make that mistake, they don't validate it. So once you have submitted your application online, you must send the documents by email to validate it. If you don't do that, your application is not validated. All pages of the submission sheet signed and dated by the authorizing officer. The mandatory document listed in Appendix A, as I discussed, I have already created a video how to apply sponsor license in which I have discussed about the Appendix A. See level 7 for further information of supporting documents. We are currently on level 6. After this, we will discuss L7, where we will discuss it further about the supporting documents. You must also tell us in covering email or letter accompanying about your submission sheet if you, under the general definition, you or your, have been suspended or removed from any sponsor register within the last 5 years. You have any criminal prosecution are aware of that the organization you have been involved with a similar role have failed to pay the VAT or any other form of excise duty. If you have anything prior to your license, you had any problems, in that case, you must provide a covering letter explaining everything. Now let's discuss L626. You must send all the documents within 5 working days. You should scan or take pictures of your supporting documents and send them to the email address given on the submission sheet. So when you will submit your application, you will get the submission sheet. On that submission sheet, you will have the email address where you have to provide the documents. If any mandatory items are missing or incorrect, your application will be invalid. We reject invalid applications, return them to you without further consideration, and refund the application fees. If you still wish to apply for a license, you will need to make another new application and pay the fees. If there are any documents specified in Appendix A other than mandatory documents missing on your application, or if we require any more documents or information, we will contact you by email. We will give you 5 working days to send the documents or information we ask. We must receive all documents or information by the end of the deadline date. If you are sending them by post, you must respond to our email request by return email within the deadline, telling us that you have posted the information and providing any postal reference or tracking number. So if you want to send them by post, you still need to send them by email that you are doing it, and you do that before the deadline. But you also need to tell at the same time that what is the tracking number of the documents. L629. If you have not contacted by the deadline, we will assume that you have not responded to and your application will then be refused. If this happens, your application fees will not be refunded. It is therefore very important your authorizing officer key contacts are available while we consider your application to deal with any request we may need. We will always email the person named as your key contact. If we need any further information or documents, we may also email your authorizing officer. So the key contact is very important. Make sure you provide the correct details so the home office can send you the email. Further discuss your duty and honesty. And now let's discuss the L7 supporting evidence. So what do we mean by supporting evidence? This section tells you about supporting evidence you must submit with your application and how we verify supporting evidence. General consideration. L7.1 Appendix A of the sponsor guidance specifies the evidence we need to support your application, which I have already discussed in my video about the Appendix A most important document. Some evidence of this evidence will be in the form of document, combination of documents you must send to us, and some will simply be online check that we can do without you having to send us the document. For example, anything which is online, the home office can check that. For example, rating of your takeaway, the home office can check that from EHO website. So these are the basic things. If it's a big company, London stock registered, like stock exchange registered, then the home office can check that as well. Okay. Further, this includes the evidence includes for routes other than except UK expansion worker visa, proof that you are based in the UK. So this is one of the evidence. So for example, your business address, your business documents, your tax returns and all that. are genuine and operating in the UK lawfully in the UK. If you are applying under the UK expansion worker, prove that you have a UK footprint. You must not be trading in the UK at the time you apply for your license, and overseas trading presence and credible plans expand to the UK. That's important. If relevant, evidence that you hold the appropriate planning permission or local planning authority. Consent to run your type or a class of business that you are trading address. If consent is required by your local authority. If you are required to be registered with or inspected or monitored by a statutory body to operate lawfully in the UK. For example, such as nursing or care home, financial or insurance business or healthcare provider. Prove that you are registered with the appropriate body. If you are applying as a head office and all branches or as a group of branches, you must submit evidence for each individual branch within that group. Many applicants make that mistake that they only provide the details of the head office and they only mention the addresses of the branches. But you also need to provide evidence of each branch, their existence, their business activities, number of people working there, and who's managing. All the details as much as you can provide. If you are a food business, proof of your registration with or approval from a relevant food authority. If you are applying under the skilled worker or tier 2 minister of religion, you must also provide additional documents about your organization, why you are applying, and the type of jobs you wish to fill, in addition to the minimum of the 4 other items. If you fail to submit required number of items, we will reject your application. Discuss L7.5. We reserve the right to ask for more documents at any time during the license application process or the validity period of your license. And sometime we may ask for documents which are not listed in Appendix A. Many people and many applicants do raise that question that we should not submit the documents anything apart from Appendix A. But this is not the case. You need to provide as many as documents because Home Office can ask them and they normally ask for those documents. For example, your tax returns, your invoices, all these relevant information which confirm that your case is genuine. If you fail to send us any information, evidence or documents we ask within the 5 working days, your application will be refused and your fee will not be refunded. We may also check any documents you send us using a standard procedure. We will refuse your application if we find you have sent us any false document and may refer the matter to the police. Sending your documents. How to send the documents to Home Office. You should scan or take pictures of your supporting documents and send them to the email address given on the sponsor submission sheet. Files can be in PDF preferred, JPG or PNG format. To minimize file size, we recommend you scan them back in black and white or grayscale, not color. Pictures taken by phone can be saved as a small medium file. You should carefully check the quality of all scans or pictures before sending them. So it's solely your responsibility to check it. If you are unable to provide the submission sheet and supporting evidence digitally, you can contact us using the contact details given to the submission sheet. Like you can send them by post. Any affidavit or statutory declaration must be witnessed by a qualified or independent person. For example, a solicitor, notary public, justice of peace, commissioner of oath in Scotland only, or councillor. Any documents or other evidence that we ask for which are not in English or Welsh must be accompanied by the self translation by the certified translation copy. The translator or the translation company must confirm in writing on the translation that it's true, accurate, the date of the translation, full name and contact details of the translation company. In all cases, we reserve the right to request the original document or certified copies. Original documents must be returned by Royal Mail, signed delivery to the address of the authorizing officer stated in the online sponsorship application. Now let's discuss about the certified copies. If you send certified copies of the documents by post, the person certifying the document must be issuing authority, practice of the barrister, a solicitor, chartered legal executive, a notary, or chartered accountant. The person must not be related to you, living at the same address as you, in person relationship with you, employed directly by you. The person certifying the documents must write a certified to be true copy of the original seen by me, signed and date the document, print their name under the signature, and their occupation, address, and telephone number. These details are very important when they certify the true copy of the documents. If they don't do that, Home Office will have the objection for it. Now let's discuss standard procedure for verifying documents. What is the standard procedure for the Home Office to verify your documents? We may check details or the correctness or the genuineness of the document submitted in support of your application with the issuing organization like bank, universities, professional bodies, other government department in the UK and overseas. The procedure for verifying document is we use a standard format to record the result of inquiries to make sure we record feedback consistently. If we cannot get an immediate answer to our inquiries, we will normally wait maximum of 3 weeks for the information. Many applicants apply for the sponsor license and they wait sometime longer is because they are waiting for the documents to get the answer back for the verification. We may decide that the compliance officer need to conduct either a compliance visit or a digital compliance inspection. There are 3 possible outcomes of the documents check. Number 1, document confirmed as genuine. If the documents are confirmed as genuine, in that case, the action will be we will consider your application as normal. Documents confirmed as false. In that case, we will refuse your application, whether or not the document is essential to your application. We will not refund your application fee and we may refer to the details to the police and other authorities. Check inclusive, which is very common if we are unable to verify whether a document is genuine or false. We will not consider the document as evidence to support your application and we may ask for further documents for your supporting the documents. Now let's discuss ensuring you submit the correct evidence. For example, so these are the examples provided by the Home Office guidance. So we can get the idea how to understand case to case basis. So there are 2 examples provided. The first one is you are a sports club and registered charity based in Scotland, lying under the international sports person. In this example, you must send us 3 documents and we will conduct 1 online check. This will give you a total of 4 pieces of evidence. Appendix A, which is table 2, we must have evidence of your charitable status. But we can check on this online on the Scottish Charity Regulator website. This count as one piece of evidence. Appendix A, Table 3. We must have evidence of your endorsement form, the organizing body, the government body of your sports. You must send us the relevant document. This count as one piece of evidence. Appendix A, Table 4, you must choose two more piece of evidence from Table 4 to bring your total to 4. Now let's discuss example number 2. You are a care home in England, applying under the skilled worker with 3 additional branches included in your application. In this example, there are 7 mandatory pieces of evidence. 1. Check online on your Care Quality Commission status. 3. Documents from Table 4 and 3 additional online checks on the CQC status of the branches named on your application. 1. Appendix A, which is Table 2. We must have evidence that you are inspected by the CQC. We will check this online for each care home included in your application. This means we will do 4 online checks. Appendix 2, Table 4. You must choose 3 more pieces of evidence from Table 4. How we see access to your application. This is L8 now we are discussing. Eligibility and suitability criteria. All applications for your sponsor license must meet the eligibility and suitability criteria described below. So first we will discuss the eligibility, then we will discuss the suitability criteria. So L8.2, to confirm you are eligible for license, you must provide the supporting documents listed in Appendix A of the sponsor guidance and any additional document we may request. We ask for these documents to make sure you are genuine and have an operating trading presence in the UK. L8.3, if you have no operation or operating or trading presence in the UK, or in the case of UK expansion worker, if you have no UK footprint, we will refuse your application. If we find you have no operating or trading presence in the UK after granting a license, we will revoke your license. So the Home Office can revoke your license and the Home Office can refuse your application at the time of when you apply. So you need to make sure that you provide all the evidence that you are trading presence in the UK. Now let's discuss the suitability criteria. The suitability criteria determine whether we grant or refuse your application, change the sponsor rating or of the existing license, or revoke an existing license. It may also affect the limits we set for certificate of sponsorship that you can assign. To assess suitability, we look after whether you have human resource and recruitment system in place to meet or continue to meet your sponsor duties. We are able to conduct compliance check of an immediate unannounced basis to ensure you are complying with the sponsor duties. This includes check at any physical address where you are your sponsored worker carry out working, their employment duties, and etc. If access to third-party site is deemed necessary by us, either at application stage or later as part of compliance check, we need to see evidence of arrangement between you and the third party that would ensure full cooperation by that third party. You meet the specific requirement of the route or routes in which you are applying to be licensed. Genuine vacancy, salary, and skill levels. If you are lying under skilled worker, scale up or GPM routes, we must satisfy you can offer genuine employment that meets the salary and skill criteria of those roles. If your business involves using no or little physical office space, a virtual business model, we will consider the type of work sponsored worker will be doing and where the worker will be carrying out their employment duties. We may need to conduct a compliance check and or see contract between you and third party. Below are the two examples of circumstances in which we may not satisfied. You can offer genuine employment that would meet the requirement of the skilled worker route. These examples are not intended to be exhaustive. So let's discuss these two examples provided by the guidance. Example number 1, you do not currently employ or have never employed anyone in a role which meet the skilled worker requirement. This could be if you are a small retail outlet or currently have people working for you as shop assistant or in other lower skilled roles. Example 2, you tell us to require or have already sponsored a person in a role which does not appear necessary for your business. For example, you're a small fast food outlet and you tell us you need or have appointed a full-time business development manager, HR manager, or public manager, but there is no credible need for these roles in your business. So you need to make sure when you create a job, that job is genuine. You cannot just create a job for no reason. Now let's discuss L816. If we undertake a compliance check, we may visit you and interview you and any relevant person to your main or address and any other physical address where your sponsored worker would be carrying out their employment duties, including their home address if they normally work from home. If we undertake a digital compliance inspection, we may interview you and any other relevant personnel using a remote video conferencing facilities. So if you are online business, the home office probably will do a video interview. But if you mention that you have an office, like your home is your office, then home office can visit you and do the inspection. They can also interview you. If you operate a virtual business model with little or no physical office space, it is highly likely that we will conduct a compliance check with your authorizing officer, which may include a compliance visit to their physical address before making a decision on your application for your license. So now let's discuss scoring system if we conduct a compliance check. So the scoring system is designed by the home office so it can help the person who come for inspection. If we conduct a compliance check on you, either before deciding your license application or after your license has been granted, we will judge you against the criteria in the table. So the criteria is human resource system. This is number 1. How we judge this: whether you have system in place that allow you to know when your sponsored worker has not turned up for work, or to identify when their current permission is coming to an end. Conviction and civil penalties: whether or not you have an unspent criminal conviction for relevant offences or have been issued with the relevant civil penalty. Migrant compliance: whether you are employing any worker, sponsored or not, who are in breach of condition of their immigration permission. For example, a student who is working more hours than they are allowed to. So this is a very common. A student who is working more hours than allowed to, you need to do the migrant compliance check. Employment: whether you can offer employment which meet the criteria for relevant immigration route, such as genuine vacancy, salary, and skill levels. L8.21, we will grant your license if you meet all the criteria above. There are no other reason in annexure L1, L2, L3 to refuse your application. If you do not meet all the criteria, we will refuse your application if any of the circumstances listed in annexure L1 arise. We will normally refuse your application if any circumstances in annexure 2 arise. We may refuse your application if any arise in your annexure 3 L3 arise. If you follow all the guidance provided in this L1, L2, and L3, in that case, you will get the sponsored license. There is a discussion also about the sponsor rating, but obviously it's fine. Sponsor rating is A and B. Once you get the license, you will get the license, and then you will come to know which rating you have got. You normally get the B rating and then you go for the A rating. Okay, so now let's discuss the L9, the decision on your application. When we decide your application, we will write you to tell you whether we have approved or refused your application, the reason for the decision if we have refused your application. L9.2, decision letter are sent by email to the mailbox of the authorizing officer stated in the online sponsor application. We will return any original document you have sent us by Royal Mail signed delivery to the address given to the authorizing officer in your online sponsor application. If your application is approved, if we approve your application, we will tell you in our decision letter the maximum number of certificate of sponsorship you will be allowed to assign. This will be 0 if you said in your application that you are unsure whether or when you may need to recruit any overseas worker in the future. So this is a very common scenario. People normally apply for the application online for sponsorship, but they mention number 0. So the home office will return you the decision by mentioning this will be 0 if you said in your application that you are unsure. So it's always better to mention number of employees you need. Your sponsored license number, which is SLN. This is a unique to you and you must quote it in all communication with us. Now let's discuss additional service you may be eligible for. A-rated sponsor may be eligible for additional services, the premium customer service and the priority change of circumstances service. These are described below. What is premium customer service? Premium customer service offers an enhanced level of support for A-rated sponsors. Premium customer has their own dedicated account manager who will provide tailored advice and support. Premium customer service for employers page on gov.uk has full guidance about this service, including benefits, cost, eligibility criteria, and how to apply. Once you get the license, then you will get the details of the premium service as well. Now, this is about the error correction. So we will go further. Now we will discuss the cooling off period following refusal, withdrawal, revocation, surrender, civil penalty, or conviction. This is all discussed in this. The length of the cooling off period depends on their circumstances. The circumstances we will discuss one by one. Your application was refused or would have been refused had you not withdrawn because your application was sent by a representative, you did not provide documents or information we requested by a specific deadline for reason outside your control, you applied to be licensed on a scale up route and your application was refused solely because you do not meet the definition of qualifying scale up sponsor. In that case, your cooling period of no cooling off period, you can apply again at any time. So here we are discussing the cooling off period. So let's discuss another where you will get the idea. Your previous application was refused or would have been refused had you not withdrawn it for any reason not otherwise mentioned in this table. 6 months from the date of your application was refused, or the date we notified you that we accepted your withdrawal request, as the case may be. So this is the 6 month cooling off period if you do the circumstances on the left side which is mentioned. You previously held a sponsor license and it was revoked. In that case, 12 months from the date of notice. You have been issued a civil penalty. In that case, 12 months from the date. More than one civil penalty has been issued to the owner, director, and authorizing officer. 12 months from the date penalties were paid in full. You have been issued a civil penalty or charge under any of these. 5 years from the date you paid the penalty or charge in full. You have been issued with 2 or more legal civil penalties employing an illegal worker. 3 or more civil penalties are issued to an owner, director, authorizing officer of the organization. In that case, we may refuse your license application for up to 5 years after you paid the penalty date. You have, or a person mentioned above, an unpaid civil penalty or charge for any other offenses listed above, and you are still liable once you or your objection and appeal their rights exhausted. Indefinite. We will not grant you license while you have unpaid civil penalty. So you must pay the penalty. Minimum, that's the best you can do. Still, you can get 5 years cooling off period in that case. You have unspent criminal conviction for relevant offenses until the conviction is spent. So now let's discuss the notes on the table above, where more than one cooling off period is relevant to the circumstances and the longest cooling off period will apply. I'll go quick because the cooling off period is not that important. At this time, when you're applying for the application, example 1, unless you're applying it again, your application was refused because you did not meet all the requirement of the route in which you are applying 6-month cooling off period, and because you have recently been issued with a civil penalty for employing an illegal worker, which you are paying off in agreed installment. Okay. In this scenario, you will not be eligible to make a successful successful application until 12 months have elapsed. Example 2, your application was refused because you did not meet all the requirement of the route in which you are applying 6-month cooling off period, and because you have previously been issued a civil penalty for employing an illegal worker. You paid that penalty in full 10 months ago. In this scenario, 6 months cooling off period will apply, as the cooling off period for the penalty will expire in 2 months. Now let's discuss new application after the cooling off period. Before you reapply, you must ensure that the reason we refused or would have refused your previous application or revoked or would have revoked your previous application no longer apply. The fact that the cooling off period has expired does not mean we will grant your application. You must fully meet the requirement set out in this guidance. Now let's discuss L10 of this guidance, which is sponsorship management system. What is sponsorship management system? Once licensed, you will be given access to the sponsorship management system, which is known as SMS. This online function allows you to carry out day-to-day activities and report any changes to us, such as changes of address, and we will use it to manage or renew your organization license, create or assign certificate of sponsorship, apply for defined certificate of sponsorship skilled worker, report changes of circumstances of your sponsored worker, including withdrawal of your sponsorship. Now let's discuss L10.2. The SMS system allows users two level of access, level 1 and level 2. The level decides the type of access permissions the user has to the system and the functions they can perform. Your SMS account is also a source of information about your sponsored license. You can see the details of how many SMS users you have appointed and who they are. The date of your license will expire, the number of certificate of sponsorship left to assign, and when you can allocation of your certificate of sponsorship will expire. It is recommended that level 1 user must access the account at least once a month so they know that what they are doing is correct and the messages, if any, sent by the home office, they can get access to. Now let's discuss the adding routes to your license. Once your license has been granted, you can apply to add routes to it. For example, if you were originally licensed under the skilled worker only, you could add senior or special list worker. The fees will be different between the fees for a sponsored license for the worker routes and for the fee for the sponsored license for the temporary worker routes. So there will be a different fees for each type of route you have applied. There is no additional fees to pay for adding routes if you are a small charitable sponsor or you are a small sponsor. You are already licensed under one or more the workers route and you paid the large fee when you originally applied, or you have license under the temporary worker routes only and you wish to add other temporary worker routes to your license. For example, you have creative worker route and you wanted to add scale up route on that. Let's go further and discuss this annexure 1, level 1, circumstances in which we will refuse your application. We can call this L1 just to avoid the confusion. References and circumstances. So this annexure sets out the circumstances in which we will refuse your sponsor license application. So this will explain you that Home Office can refuse your license under what conditions or what circumstances we are talking about. So for example, A, you knowingly send us any false document with your application. If this happens, we will believe that the criminal offense has been committed. We will refuse your application and refer your case for prosecution. You have unspent conviction for relevant offense listed in Annexure 1, Level 4 for this guidance. You have been issued with the civil penalty charge, remain liable for penalty, apply for your license before 5 years has elapsed since the date of your penalty charge was settled. You have been refused with the civil penalty charge. So this is all the, basically all your charges under which they can refuse your license. All the civil penalties we are talking about over here. An owner or a director of or an authorizing officer of your organization has not paid an outstanding civil penalty issued. All these reasons, if you have, the Home Office can refuse your license. We have asked us to send us any documents or information to validate or support your application, and you do not send us the documents and information within the given limit time, which is 5 working days. You fail to meet one or more requirements of the route or routes in which you are applying to be licensed as set out in the relevant route specific guidance. For example, if you are applying for under the skilled worker or the global mobility routes and we are not satisfied, you can offer genuine employment which meets the skill level or salary requirement of these routes. So this is a very common reason for rejection. For example, you don't have enough funds to pay the salary, and your business is not growing that much, and you have applied for the visa. The home office can refuse your license on the basis of that. If you fully meet the requirement of one route or some routes in which you are applying to be licensed, but not others, we will only license you for this, the route or the routes in which you qualify. You do not have in place the necessary human resource system or other person to comply with the duties of the sponsor. For example, your internal communications may not be good enough for you to good if a sponsor worker has not reported for work. You are applying on a route other than UK expansion worker, and you have no operating or trading presence in the UK. You fail to meet the requirements set out in the Safeguarding Children section. Your application is sent by a representative. You fail to nominate in your online application form as an authorizing officer or at least level 1 user who meets the requirement as set out in the section 4 of this document. You have an application for sponsor license refused within the last 6 months for any reason. Your application was sent by a representative. You did not provide the documents we requested. You applied to be licensed on a scale up route, and your application was refused solely because you do not meet the definition of qualifying this scale up route. You are applying as an individual person, which is not a sole, who is not a sole trader. So you cannot apply as an individual person. This is a very important. You need to be like a running business trading company. The next year, two, L2, circumstances in which we will normally refuse your application. You have provided false statement, false information. You do not provide when required information that you held or any other government department. You have unspent criminal conviction or offenses. You have been issued with 2 or more civil penalties. There are more civil penalties have been issued within the 5 years period immediately prior to your application to the owner, director, or authorizing officer of your organization. You are or have been an owner, director, or an authorizing officer of a sponsor organization which has been ordered to pay costs to the Home Office in any legal proceeding, and those costs have not been paid. You have been previously named as a key person at any sponsor organization whose sponsorship license has been revoked in any route within the last 12 months. So, for example, you were working for a different company and you were named as a key person, but the license was revoked. So, in that case, the Home Office can refuse your license on that. You are employing a worker, whether sponsored or not, who is subject to an immigration control, and that person either does not have a permission to enter or stay in the UK, or they are working in breach of the condition of their permission, and you could reasonably have aware of this breach, which is also very common. You are employing a worker. So, for example, you're employing someone who is subject to immigration control, and that person is or has breached the permission to stay in the UK or does not have the permission to enter into the UK. So that person, that's also one of the reasons. Now let's discuss anything further in this. Okay, so yeah. So now let's discuss next year L3, circumstances in which we may refuse your application. So first we did L1, L2, now we are doing L3. So we'll discuss number B. You have previously been asked to provide evidence to allow us to decide whether an organization was complying with the duties of sponsorship and information was not provided. That's one of the reasons. You have or you are aware that the sponsor organization or have been involved in similar role within the last 5 years, or and or has been issued with the civil penalty or failure of to pay the VAT duty. Now we discuss Annexure 4L4 relevant offences, which is like, these are the all relevant offences. Any offence under the following acts. So Immigration Control Act 71, 88, 2014, any offences in Appendix B. So all these are the offences which has been discussed. This is just the end of the application we are discussing. So an offence under the Section 7 Sexual Act, all these offences the Home Office has provided under this scheme. So this is page 65. Now we are page 66. Any offense not otherwise listed above. The normal offenses are very common: tax and excise duty offense, bribery, proceeding of crimes, money laundering. Any of these offenses have been committed, then Home Office can refuse your